So the book is basically like to couch as a space opera sci-fi adventure. It follows a guy named Cade who, through circumstances, gets a really powerful weapon thrust into his hands, and with this weapon, he has to free the galaxy from a tyrannical empire. So it's very Star Wars-y, Guardians of the Galaxy-y. Comes out in January 2nd, and what's been cool is we've gotten some good reviews, like some place like Booklist and Kirkus has really liked it. But there was one very special review that I wanted to just give an expert from because I was so excited this guy had such a good reaction. It's Pat from fantasyhotlist.blogspot.com. And Pat says, this will get you guys jazzed. I was so excited. Pat says, there is a sequel in the works, which is actually one of the details he actually got right. Will I read it? To be honest, I'd rather undergo a prostate exam than read the second installment. Yes, I kid you not. So, I made people feel things, which is the goal of an artist. So, so I was glad that happened. So, so I'm going to read from a chapter that's from the perspective of the queen of the evil empire, the empire's praxis. Her name's Gahali. So this is a chapter from her perspective that's a little bit brief, so I figured I'd dive into that. Everything was in its right place. In the privacy of her suture room, Gahali floated on a hover disk, meditating on recent events. Four small torches, one in each corner of the room, provided the only light, and the reinforced walls were sure to smother the din of the surrounding ship before a single decibel could penetrate her sacred chamber. The silence was interrupted, the serenity was absolute. Gahali considered the might of the Praxis kingdom, her kingdom, built through the determination and audacity of her will, and found comfort in the order it had provided the galaxy. Some systems still stood opposed to Praxis, but dissent would soon be a thing of the past. The rising suns would be rooted out and meet their end. Those who incited rebellion in any system would be made a public example of. Praxis had invaded Tychus at last, and it would only be a matter of time before every Rye and every master was battered and broken. And while Gahali planned on taking unimaginable joy at the Well's fraud spiritualism defeating its vaunted Rye, Tychus' end was a footnote in her motivation for sacking her rival's planet. The Praxis Kingdom was spread comfortably throughout the galaxy, with numerous systems under annexation and possessing a fleet large enough to dwarf even the unification of those opposed. Even with their efforts to prevent a bloody galactic war and interrupt further annexations, the Well was nothing more than a nuisance than close to a relief brigade that the Galactic Guardians claimed to be. And the only thing that prevented Gahali from decimating it before was perception. Had Praxis, without provocation, launched a preemptive strike, it would create martyrs, and martyrs could make for rebellion. But now that reasoning didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered the way it once had. The Rakura had been leased at long last. The Rakura is the very powerful weapon, and no one could prevent the Praxis Queen, a self-appointed role and the first one that Praxis had ever known, from claiming what was rightfully hers. When she did, the galaxy would see Tychus, and the Well specifically, fall. They'd bear witness to Gahali wielding the Rakura as the one responsible for bringing them to heel. And no one, not one person in the entire galaxy, would dare utter one word in opposition about it. Gahali knew calm. She knew peace. The vision of a future sure to come helped bring Gahali as close as she could in her tranquility. For years she prepared herself in body, mind, and spirit, and she would prove herself worthy of the coveted mantle that should have been hers years before. As her body rested under the spell of her meditation, the world around her went dark. She could no longer sense the engine's rhythmic hum or even feel her legs resting on the hover disk. Gahali felt close to transcending her body, but then she'd remembered the parts of hers that weren't her own. How her left arm, part of her chest, and the side of her face had been scorched off her body and replaced with flesh and bone that, even after all these years, felt like an invasive presence. How half of her body, a body she persistently cultivated throughout her life, physically and spiritually, was forever trapped in a containment suit that pulsed dark blue waves of antimatter over its indestructible exterior, preventing any more of her from being lost. It reminded her of her greatest loss and suffering. It reminded her of her need for justice. It reminded her of her rage. Gahali didn't have to look at the apparatus grafted to her body to visualize it in her mind's eyes. That, and how she got it, was forever burned in her memory. The suit rose from her waist, covering most of her rib cage before sitting snugly over her left arm, wrapping around her neck and plating the bottom half of her jaw. It kept her body, what was left of it, contained. It kept her alive. There had been a time, at the urging of her medical team, that Gahali also donned plating over the scarring that veined over her mouth, across her cheek, and through her eye, like a lattice of ravines that had been scored into her flesh. The remembrance of her scars brought back pain that gave way to agony much deeper than any physical discomfort. Still, she had no desire to cover her scars like they were something to be ashamed of, when the opposite was true. The scars and the hurt that still lingered made Gahali strong. They ensured that she never, ever lost focus of her purpose. The containment suit, choking her body, tore Gahali out of her reverie and assured her that she'd have no peace, nor transcendence, until she righted the wrong from so long ago, until she had the power to control the fate of the galaxy in her hands. And as the door to her suture room opened, she knew that peace was delayed once again. Thank you.